And I'm Mary.
And together we're the Audacious Autistics Podcast. We're both queer, non-binary, intuitive coaches creating a safe space to discuss everything from autism to astrology, including social justice, intersectionality, and more, living unmasked and out loud.
Before we get started, we always want to take a moment to thank all of you that have joined us on our Podia community and anyone that supports our podcast in any way, whether you share our episodes on social media, you buy our merch, or send us tips on Venmo and Cash App when you have the funds. We appreciate you so much. If you like receiving more personalized content and you're able to help support us financially, the links to our Podia can be found in the description and on our social media. For those of you that aren't aware, Podia is going to be replacing our Patreon. Podia is a community platform where we can do multiple things. We have a free community space and also paid options for those that want a little bit more intimate, exclusive engagement and can also support us financially. We also have all of our classes on Podia, and we will continue to build that space as we move forward. You can find us at audaciousautisticspodcast.podia.com or check in the description for the direct link. Last month, we released a bonus episode where we went into more on the conversation of last month's All the Things episode on communication. So you can receive the full catalog of season 1 bonus episodes at the $5 and up Podia tiers. You can also purchase it separately through our products page. So I'm going to pass it over to Asiatu to talk a little bit more about Podia, merch, and some other things we have going on.
So this is available on our merchandise site.
And for people that aren't watching, it is...
Yes, if you're not watching, it is a stuffed dark brown and khaki colored dog with a red unicorn t-shirt that has a geometric unicorn on the front, and on the back it has a definition of unicorn.
It's adorable.
It's adorable, super soft, and we have the dog available. The teddy bear was so popular that the site ran out, so I think it's temporarily out of stock right now, and they're waiting to get more in. So check out the dog, really cute, great gift idea. And also, we have putting the fun in executive dysfunction. Magnets, t-shirts, hoodies, bags,
Pins.
Pins. Here's some pins. And we also have Wentworth collection, which is in a world of Elon's Bia Wentworth, and also our logo collection, as well as Go Where You're Watered, which is also one of my favorites. And this is our logo t-shirts. So again, all of these things plus hoodies, beanies, bags,
water bottles,
phone cases, water bottles, mugs, and a whole lot more, clothes, all can be found on our merch site. And before I forget, I'm all over the place today, as per usual, but more so than usual. PUNIVUS, I have been posting about it. I had started this holiday in 2019 under a different name, and then 2020, I switched it to PUNIVUS. And it's because I love puns so much. They make me so happy. Puns, aka dad jokes, corny jokes, whatever you want to call them. They're the greatest. But PUNIVUS I created because of my seasonal depression. And usually it's kicked off again after the holidays are over because of all of the hype and the energy and, everything. So I would basically crash emotionally. And so I wanted, after the whole New Year's, holiday. And so I wanted to bring something for people to look forward to still have, to still enjoy. It's going to be January 2nd to the 8th, 2022. And I will be explaining this for the first time here. So you guys are hearing it for the first time. So basically, every day I ask that you post a punny or puntastic meme or joke on your page, hashtag PUNIVUS 2022. And every day, me, Mary, and our third business partner, Divergent Lens, or Angie, will decide daily who we like the best, and then at the end decide 3 winners. There will be prizes, one of which is the dog, in which I just showed you, as well as the magnet and pins. And then the third one is going to be a water bottle. Go where your water bottle. So prizes, and those prizes specifically for the US, just because it would be expensive to send it overseas. But I also just wanted to say we will have prizes for if we decide that people who have won are, not within the US. There will be other prizes, which I won't share. So that'll be a surprise. We'll see how that goes.
They can play no matter where they are then, right?
No matter where you're located, you can play again, just from the 2nd to the 8th. It's a week long, purposely just to get us through the week after the whole crash of after the holidays of just laughter, jokes, fun. Make sure that you use the hashtag PUNIVUS 2022, so we'll be able to find it and we'll be able to see it, and be able to pick which one. So just one per day. Please do not overwhelm us. We love you dearly, but please don't overwhelm us with multiple in one day. Just post as many as you'd like. You can post 1, you can post 2, but just, 1 daily from the 2nd to the 8th is acceptable. So I'm excited, and I can't wait to see what people post, because people are constantly sending me DMs of punny jokes. It's just, I love it. It always makes my day, and I just want to thank everybody for doing it and just seeing me and loving my corny, punny, dad jokey type of humor. So I appreciate it. So I'm excited. PUNIVUS 2022 coming soon. PUNIVUS.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Cool. Anything else about Podia we didn't talk about?
Nope. Just come on over to Podia. It's a great space, and we're going to do so much more in 2022 and be much more interactive. And I'm personally not going to be posting much on social media, specifically decreasing my free labor, just because honestly, I just can't, and I'm getting burnt out, and for my own mental health and just my well-being.
So we can keep showing up. Like, it's important that we're continuing to show up and enabled, and in order for us to be able to keep showing up for the communities and ourselves, we have to be resourced, and we have to, like Asiatu and I put out a ton this year, and we love and appreciate all of the support. And by the end of the year, we're like, okay, now we know, like, we need to just scale it back a little bit, how much free stuff we're putting out. And social media, anybody that follows us knows how we feel about, Instagram and Facebook specifically, and all the issues that lay there. And so it just tacks on additional frustration and additional labor, whereas with our Podia, we don't have to deal with all of that extra stuff. And so, that's a main reason that we're asking that you join us there too, is because we want to continue to connect with you, and we want to continue to do it in as safe of a place as we can. And exactly. Yeah. So
that was our goal. That was our goal of actually creating this podcast, was to create a safe space. And it's hard to create a safe space within a toxic environment, within a toxic, racist, ableist, sexist company such as Facebook, or Meta, whatever, Meta fuckery. But anyway, we want to have more control of our content. We don't want to have to deal with bullshit censorship. We want to be able to engage more, as well as, more safely. And so we really want to create that safe space. And we think and cross our fingers thus far are hoping that we can do that within Podia. And so far, so good. And just as another tip, we do pay for the space of Podia. It is free to join. Again, with the option of subscribing and tiers, but we pay for the space. But what I like about that better than Patreon is Patreon takes a percentage of your profits, so it fluctuates. So no matter how much you make, it's still a percentage going to Patreon on top of fees. Whereas Podia, it's a monthly subscription that we know per month, we can budget for. And we know that no matter how much we bring in, whether it's a good month, a bad month, or in between, we still have a very specific and limited, cutoff and amount that we know that we're going to have to pay, or that amount that we know that we're just going to set aside for that. So it's worth it for us. And again, we're creating this space and paying for this space because we love you guys so much, and we're so appreciative of that of your support, and we genuinely want a safe space that we're willing to pay for it for that to be the case. So
yeah, absolutely. So if anybody wants to like get in on what we're doing on Podia and you have any questions about it, you can always reach out to any of us, and we'll help guide you through the change. We understand that change can be difficult, and especially like when you're unsure of what the site is like and why you would shift, like we can answer any of those questions for you. So feel free to reach out to us at any point. Okay, so we have rambled on now for who knows how long. But is there anything else, Audacious, before we get into what this is even about today?
Our season finale. I just want to say this is our season finale, 8 episodes, not including bonus episodes, all the things series. So thankful and appreciative of all the support that we've gotten this year. And thank you, Marie, for just being here and being such an awesome person and friend and just amazing. Like, I couldn't do this without you. And I'm so thankful. And I'm so happy that we connected and we decided to do this. And it's just changed my life and the lives of so many for the better. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here very much. And we did it.
Yeah,
well, we're about
to.
The
last one. I know. And all of that stuff, I just appreciate and adore you and the work that you do for the community and for me and for everyone that, follows you and sees something, in themselves that they haven't seen anywhere else. Like, it's such a powerful place that, you stepped into and we've stepped into, and I'm honored to be here with you. So as we gush over each other, know that this is all gushing for you as well. We love you and are so appreciative to have this space, and we wouldn't have it without you. For real. So
for real. We just be talking to each other, which would be fine because we do it anyway. But it's always that much. It's just the added bonus that people actually listen and learn about themselves through our episodes. And we're always so thankful to get those messages from you. So please don't ever feel like we're not accessible, because we totally are. And please don't think that like in 2022, I'm just totally going to cut everybody off. If you send me a message, most of the time, if I have the spoons, I will definitely reach out, definitely respond and engage. But yes, thank you so much for being here. And I just love what we do. And I love helping people. And I love like just this whole process and this journey. So with that said, let's talk about sex.
Yes. So again, thank you for joining us for our 8th and final episode in the All the Things series, season 1. In this episode, we're talking about sex and intimacy. And I'm honestly so happy that this is coming up right now, right before, so here, Astro Nerd little moment. But it's right before Venus and Pluto do this like dance in the sky through Capricorn, and Venus is retrograde. And this is going to be a subject that people are navigating. A lot of people are navigating sex and intimacy and what that looks like for them in their past. And so with any of the episodes that we talk about, this can get activating. Some emotions may come up as we talk about some of this stuff, and that's valid. So as always, like, resource yourself as needed. This will be here for you to come back when you're ready. But I just thought the timing was really cool with what Venus is doing in the sky, and how I feel like this is going to touch people at a time where they're needing it and navigating this as well. So if you're interested in more on the Venus astrology talk, I have a digital workshop available, and the link will be in the description, but it's also available through my personal Patreon and our Audacious Autistics Podia site. So if you're interested in that, absolutely check it out and learn all about what Venus is doing and how to work with that energy. But so getting into sex and intimacy and neurodivergence and autistics specifically. So autistics have sex. Some of us do, some of us don't. Literally like any other demographic, right? Sex and intimacy looks different for every single person. And I think that's kind of where we want to start. Just that, yes, autistic people have sex like anyone else, right? And of course, some of us don't, like any other section and community. Yeah.
There's a spectrum to everything. All human behavior is a spectrum. Very few absolutes exist in life. But yes, so we're going to dive into a little more deeply of what neurodivergence and sexuality and intimacy means to us.
Yeah. So I think, when we talk about sex and intimacy, I think one of the things that Asiato and I were talking about previously before we hopped on here is that there's so much that is centered around heteronormative and, very ableist kind of narratives around sex. And when we talk about ableist narratives, it's physical disabilities and also any kind of neurological and mental disabilities as well often get left out of this sex conversation. Like, people just assume that if we're disabled, we're not having sex or we're not able to connect. And that's just not true. And so let's just go a little bit into, those kind of misconceptions, if you want to just start there.
Sure. So, as you said, there's this widely untrue misperception that autistics do not have sex, or autistics don't crave, or not necessarily crave, that's a poor word. They don't want connection and they don't want, touch. As for me, perfect example, I love physical touch, but from my partner. Whereas I generally don't like to be touched by other people, including handshakes, including hugs. I don't like that. I don't like it. So if I ever get huge and big and you see me out, don't run up and try to give me a hug. Please don't do that.
Boundaries.
I don't. It's so, even though I don't like to be touched generally, there's still that exception within my relationship, around my romantic relationship. It fosters a sense of intimacy. And actually one of my higher love languages, or more dominant love languages, is physical touch. Also, I would want to say that, especially with like physical disabilities, people just assume that because people have physical disabilities, that they're incapable of also having sex, which is, again, not true. It can be true for some, but it's definitely not true for everybody all the way around. And I think, just generally speaking, if you walk away from this, I just want you to walk away with the understanding that sex and intimacy and connection is not all, heteronormative by any means. And you can have intimacy without having sex. You can have sex without having intimacy. You can have, intimacy with physical touch. You can have intimacy without physical touch. Conversations, and communication styles can be quite intimate in certain aspects. And especially when it comes to neurodivergent people, one of the things that really annoys me is the heteronormative ableist idea that, if people are connecting outside of quote unquote real life or in person, therefore it's not as valid or invalid altogether, compared to, relationships that are built and fostered within in person. And if COVID has taught us anything, that is one of the main things COVID has taught us, which is that's not true. It's just bullshit. You can have very close, intimate, loving, nurturing, wonderful connections via, online, and that they're just as valid and just as wonderful and supportive and loving and comforting as, other relationships, in other spaces. And then the flip side of that is there are plenty of people who have family and friends, especially autistic people, who, they're around people and they don't feel understood. They don't feel seen. They don't feel comforted. They don't feel like they have, that intimate connection or just intimacy at all with other people. So it just depends on the person, depends on their needs. So yes, that's just my main thing that I want people to understand and to walk away from this episode understanding.
Yeah. I love that you bring that part in about, what COVID has taught a lot of people about intimacy, being able, like, it doesn't have to be like face to face or right in that moment. And, it reminds me of, when I was growing up and I was in high school and I was in a area that didn't have very many queer folks. Like, I was one of the only ones. And so the only way that I was able to find that connection was via MySpace at the time, like via the internet, and then through my phone, through text message. And, like, I was having more intimate conversations, and I don't mean even sexual at this point. Like, I was just connecting so deeply with people that lived on the other side of the United States at that time. And, people in my life have questioned that. And normally it's people that aren't queer because they've never had that experience of not being able to connect with people face to face, because there's no one around you that is queer in my experience, right? And so I feel like it's so important to tear down those stereotypes and the stigma around like online connections, and how intimate and deep and true those connections really can be, even though we're not together in the physical. And so I love that you kind of like brought that in here to this conversation as we go through. And also, you know, one of the things that I've always struggled with regarding sex is my sensory stuff, right? So I really had to learn to navigate. So at first, as I was growing up, before I knew I was autistic and I hadn't dealt with any of my trauma, you know, I went through a very violent sexual assault experience when I was in high school, and I hadn't dealt with any of that. And so I really kind of shut off everything in that kind of experience, moving through a large part of my life. And so I didn't realize that I had any sensory issues because I was so disassociated from all of the sex and intimacy that I was having through a large portion of my life, until I started kind of navigating those spaces. But once I started navigating that trauma and really starting to work through it and understanding what intimacy is for me and what sex looks like for me and what's comfortable for me, I ran into these huge overloads with sensory in those settings. And so that was a really hard thing for me to navigate. And, you know, luckily I'm blessed in the partner, you know, part of my life, and he was able to like really support me through that process. And, you know, we continue to navigate that space, and we continue to recognize like what's too much, right? And so sensory stuff with neurodivergent folks, specifically autistic people, can really, really be something that is hard to navigate in sex. And if we're not talking about it and we're not aware of it, and so when I say talking about it, if we're not talking about it as a collective and people aren't aware of this being an issue, and that there are ways to navigate it and understand it, and so, you know, I feel like we're being kind of left in this abyss to figure it out. And so, you know, I think it's important that we kind of have these conversations together, and so that other people know like, oh, that's something that other people experience, and there's a way to work through that. And, you know, so sensory stuff is definitely plays a role in this conversation.
For me, sensory, it's like twofold. So when I first started having like pleasure and physical pleasure, and I'm talking about like super young, you know, like kindergarten and elementary school, you know, and through basically obviously mostly through masturbation.
Yeah.
Those feelings were so intense, and such a high, strong urge to constantly wanting to feel those emotions. And I find that tends, you know, that can also be the case with autistic kids who tend to want to masturbate a lot.
Yeah.
Because the sensory of it is just not only pleasurable, but for me specifically, it was a means to focus. It was a means to kind of mute some of the sensory input and just help me like just mainstream that, you know. So not only did I have the physical response and the pleasure of it, but it was also like a sensory break.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like I probably masturbated a whole hell of a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
But I also, it's kind of, I don't know how much of it was sensory and how much of it, because I was also molested as a child, and how much of it was also, I guess, response to being molested. So, but again, something that's super common amongst, you know, AFAB autistics and girls is that, you know, we tend to experience sexual abuse at a higher rate. But I will say, so for me, sensory is not only like, it's either two extremes. It's either I'm super under stimulated, and I can go from having like, you know, a high sex drive, sensory seeking, you know, pleasure or whatever, and then go to the other extreme where it's just like nothing, where I'm just like, it's too much leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't touch me.
Yeah.
Like, just let me be.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
go ahead.
I was just going to say another example is with, I hate open mouth kissing, because I'm like, French kissing just sounds so like elementary school. Like, oh my God, you guys are French kissing. So, but yeah, so for me, I hate open mouth kissing. And I, for many years, struggled with just feeling like I had to with partners because that was expected. And I did not enjoy it at all. And it was just the sensory of it. It was just too wet and tactile and just, it was just, to me, it felt like basically like a Saint Bernard just slobbering over you. And I'm just like, like, why do people enjoy this? Like, what the fuck? And I actually found out recently, talking to somebody, who that was actually one of the questions on their autism evaluation was, do you like open mouth kissing?
Oh, wow.
And apparently that's common amongst autistics. And I luckily, at one point, found a partner who was autistic who didn't like it either. And it was wonderful. And I was like, yes! And I was just like, this is perfect. We don't ever have to fucking open mouth kiss. Like, I love the sensation of like pecks, and I love being kissed like on my body, and I love like pecking because I love like the soft pillowiness of like full lips. I love that. But as far as like going beyond that with like tongue and spit and no thank you, I'm good. I'm totally good.
Well, and I recognize too that mind shifts and mind changes, like, and I feel you on the open mouth kissing just being too much. But if I'm like in the moment, sometimes like I'm craving that too. So, you know, there's this like dance, right? And so this kind of leads me into the conversation about, yes, it's fluid. And so, you know, these things come on spectrums. And so I think a lot of times when we're trying to figure out who we are, and, you know, whether it's sexuality or gender or what we want to do for a career, like, I feel like we really pressure ourselves to come up with that label, right? And so these things are fluid, and they're allowed to be. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you'll go through a phase where you might identify with being asexual, and that might shift. It might not. You might be asexual your entire life, or that might shift to something else, and that's okay. So like, this is another place in our experience where we get to figure it out, and we're allowed to shift and change in what we like, and what's too much one day might not be too much the next day or the next hour, right? Like, we're human beings.
Or it depends on the person. Because I will say, there have been probably, of all of the people I've kissed, there was probably, I'd say 2 or 3 that I actually enjoyed open mouth kissing. They were the exception.
Yeah.
But I was shocked that I actually found an exception, because I was just like, wait a second, I actually like kissing this person. This is weird.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and everybody kisses differently. And so like, if you're with somebody and you want to kiss them and they're doing it in a way that's overwhelming you, or it's too much, that's where the communication pieces come in. Right. And so sex and intimacy also involves communication styles sometimes, usually, right? Especially if we want to match and meet people and partner with them in that way. But, you know, like, you're allowed to talk about your sensory needs. You're allowed to talk about what you want in sex or don't want in sex, what you want in intimacy, what you don't want in intimacy. And, you know, so like, communicating that is also allowed, right? Like, we can talk about it. Like, it's one of those things that still feels kind of taboo to talk about. And, you know, I'm not like super open about my sexual experiences and my sexuality, because it's mine to navigate, but I'm also not offended to talk about sex. You know, it's not a taboo subject. You know, it can be mine, and I can keep things that are mine, and also have conversations about sex generally and intimacy generally. Like, it's not something to be ashamed of. And I feel like a lot of times in this society specifically, it's shameful. We hold a lot of shame around sex.
colonizer, binary, heteronormative, Christian, fucking fucked up
Yeah.
society that we live in.
Yeah,
I
for
also,
sure.
I don't know, that I feel like a lot of autistics who are sensory seeking tend to also explore a lot within BDSM, which I think is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Especially those who like, pressure, or play around with, consensual, pain, and like, or just being tied up, and things of that, and rope play. And I think
Yeah.
that's all wonderful, and all a wonderful way in which to explore sexuality with the sensory in a positive, healthy environment, as long as it's consensual, clearly, and that you're comfortable to do so. And I invite people who are, interested in that to not feel shamed, and to know that, it's, I can't say generally how common it is, but I will say I've met quite a few autistics who do enjoy that. And
well, and it's a great way. It's a great way to tap into, especially if you have sexual trauma. It's a great way to kind of navigate those spaces and work to kind of heal some of that trauma and those shadowy places that we hold. And again, like Asiatu said, as long as it's in a consensual setting where you feel empowered and you feel that you have control to the degree that you're seeking, it can be a beautiful, beautiful way to navigate yourself, navigate your past, and just tap into this whole new world of pleasure for yourself. Some people, and again, some people will tap into it and they're like, nope, I don't want this. And that's valid. Like,
nope, I don't want this. This is not fun. No, thank you.
And that's why it's fine. And that's why it's so important that you do it in a place where it's consensual and you have safe words and you do all of those things.
Yes,
and you do
I was
the
just
research.
about to say that. I am a huge proponent, and I've said this before, and I don't know if people have heard the other episodes, but I'm a huge proponent in safe words, not only within sexual context, but I feel every relationship, regardless of neurodivergence, regardless of poly or monogamous, regardless of the situation, regardless of romantic, friendship, whatever the case is, I feel like every relationship that is super intimate, that you should have a safe word. And not only, like I said, within the sexual context, but like if you guys are getting into a heated argument, or you guys are triggered, or you get caught in, as Mary says, the trauma drama, and it's a cycle and you want to break that, or you feel overwhelmed or overstimulated in the moment, and especially for autistics, and we might experience unreliable speech. To be able to just say one word might be easier, or to text one word might be easier than to actually have to sit there and explain. Or if we have alexithymia, in which we don't necessarily know how we feel or can't identify what it is that we feel, we just know we can't talk, it can be easier to use that as well. So I always highly recommend that in your most intimate relationships that you have a safe word.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. So we've talked about the sensory stuff, and that kind of leans into the autism side of it. So let's talk a little bit about the ADHD side of it and attention, right? So this is
ADHD.
something. Yeah. So sometimes people that have ADHD.
Oh my God, it's so hard to concentrate sometimes. Like, I enjoy sex, I enjoy, when I'm having it, but there are definitely times where I'm just like, brain, can we focus? Can we stay in, like, here? Can you stop thinking about like 20 million gazillion things at the same fucking time? Like, And it's really interesting because I've had a partner in the past that he was so attentive, which was beautiful, and I loved him for it. But he would be able to tell when I would like my attention without me saying anything, literally just feeling it and sensing it, that he could tell that, I was starting to check out. And then he was like, okay, well, let's, do something different, to try to like change things up. Or, he'll check in with me like, everything good. And that was so rare and so appreciated, because, and then I've been with people that are like, it's like we're constantly changing, and and I found partners that are just like, oh my gosh, like, I enjoy you because like you can keep up with like my energy or my constant transition or shifting or whatever. And most people complain, and I'm like, fuck no. And I'm just like, yeah, like I'm like a Tasmanian devil, just like all the time. Like I'm totally okay with that. And again, it's all about compatibility and consent and connection and communication and, you know, just understanding that. But yeah, there's definitely points in time where, like, you know, and I've read stuff online, which breaks my heart. Like, if they're, you know, having a sexual encounter and like the TV's on in the background and it's like they get distracted or they start to giggle because they could hear, you know, the joke being said on the TV. And of course the partner then internalizes it and gets defensive and gets angry and it's just like, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. So don't do that. Like, if you know somebody who's ADHD, it has nothing to do with, you know, you. It has nothing to do with your lack of ability to keep us focused. It has nothing to do with what you can or can't do skill wise. It's literally just our brain. And that's okay. Like, and, you know, you at that point can decide if you want to continue or if you want to try something different or, you know, whatever the case is to try to bring everything back. But just know it's just as frustrating for us, and we feel just as bad 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, that we made you feel bad because we can't focus. But just know that it's not about it. Just our brains just they just do their own thing. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah, what 100%.
But the flip side of that is if you like constant change, we're perfect. And we tend to also be open and fluid and more open to things, generally speaking. Of course, again, it's a spectrum.
Well, yeah, I mean, with ADHD, it's that impulsivity that is often being seeked, right? So a lot of times
that
people
dopamine, that adrenaline, that push. So yeah,
and you know, it can show up all kinds of different ways, and especially if you're autistic and you have ADHD, like, who's going to show up today? Nobody knows. Like, you know, and so I think part of the conversation today is just, for me, is just hoping that hearing this, you allow a little bit of grace for wherever you are in this process with sex and intimacy. You know, like, you're valid. I don't care what's happening in your experience. You're valid to be there. You know what I mean? Like, totally. And so often we carry so much shame, guilt around sex. I mean, I'm still, you know, I'm a coach and a healing guide and a shadow worker, and I'm still working through a lot of this as well. Like, it's a continuous journey, digging deeper into ourselves and coming to different parts of the spiral where we thought we healed this and then something else, you know, presents us. Just kidding. Here we are. And that's okay. That's okay. Like, that's part of this journey of being a human, is continuously evolving and shifting and allowing that, those shifts and awarenesses to come to you, and holding yourself with grace and compassion, because you're valid in any way that you react in sexual or intimate places. If, you know, you buckle up and you're not open to it, that's valid, right? There's something in your experience, no matter what it is, and there doesn't have to be a reason or a label. Like, that is, you know, you're valid. So I guess that's my main point here is, wherever you are, we love you.
Exactly. I highly second that. And like, learning is never linear. And it's okay. And it's okay to, especially dealing with trauma and sexual trauma, like, you know, a few experiences back to back have been wonderful and amazing. And then that one time something's triggered and then you might regress. And that's okay. That just means that it's your body's way of saying, hey, you still have a little bit more, you know, of healing to do over here in this area. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's all it is. It's just an indication of, you know, where the wounds are. And in order for healing to happen, we first have to know where the wounds are and what they are. Otherwise, we're just all willy-nilly, like everywhere. We're all over the place. So yeah, linear. Nothing. Very few things in life are linear. The time isn't even linear. That's just the colonizer concept of time. So, but just know that, just be graceful with yourself, especially if you've had trauma. And same for those who are partners of people who have had trauma. Know that it's not going to, you can't assume that it's always going to be the same. You can't assume that there aren't going to be bumps in the roads, and you can't assume that, you know, for those bumps that they're going to get stuck, or those bumps aren't going to last some time, or whatever the case is. It's fluid. It's going to happen. Things are going to happen. And my advice to you, especially if you're someone who's dealing with a partner who has trauma, is to hold space and to manage your expectations so that you don't project them onto them, because they're already dealing with so much. Yeah. So have an understanding of that, and that it's not going to be linear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could go literally years without having any issues at all whatsoever. And then that one night, that one thing happens, and it just totally triggers them. And again, it's not you, it's just the trauma being triggered and coming up. So
and sometimes they don't even know, like the person that's being triggered doesn't even know why they were triggered, or wouldn't have known like what's coming up. So there's so many layers to everything, right? And so we just have to recognize that people are going through a process. Like we're all going through our own process. And you know, there's so much to navigate here. And so, you know, like if you're struggling around this and you need a place to talk it through, Audacious and I are both coaches that can hold space for that process. And we're both open to helping you find a place that you feel comfortable in seeing. If it's not with one of us, like we'll help you find support. That's part of being in this community. Like if we don't see you in the way you want to be seen and find comfort, then we'll help you get to that place. So please reach out if this is something that you're struggling with and you need support, and you don't kind of know where to go. Like we're here for you to listen or to help you find a place that can help guide you through that for sure. Is there anything else, Audacious, that you wanted to talk about today?
How we're more likely.
Yeah.
You want to go? Yeah,
sure. So autistics are more likely to be not heterosexual. So we're more likely to be open and fluid with our sexuality. You know, we talk in our gender class about how we're also more likely to be trans and gender variant. And I feel that the reasons are very similar in the way that we are not as stuck in societal constructs. And so heteronormative kind of life isn't what we're stuck in. We are open to being attracted to other people, right? More so than people that aren't autistic and aren't neurodivergent. And so I believe that everyone, like, you know, Audacious and I both believe that this is a spectrum. Sexuality is a spectrum, just like anything else. And, you know, I just feel like we're able, autistics and neurodivergent folks are more able to tap in and be more open to finding and exploring where they fall on that spectrum. Whereas oftentimes neurotypicals or allistic people are so stuck in that heteronormative space that they're not even open to recognizing if they are attracted to somebody else. And so, you know, like I know we wanted to note that. And as I'm talking about that, I also want to mention that sexual attraction and romantic attraction are also different. They're different spectrums.
Two different things.
So you can be romantically attracted to a certain demographic or multiple demographics, but only sexually attracted to, you know, a different demographic or different demographics. So again, when we're exploring ourselves and understanding ourselves in new ways, recognizing that these things are all different and they're all different layers and pieces of us. And again, they're all a spectrum. So, yeah.
Gender is different than sexuality, or gender expression is different than sexuality. Sexuality can also include both, you know, sexually speaking, and then also romantic, you know. So yes, there's so much, and intimacy can be, you know, explored and manifest in all different ways too, even as I said earlier, outside of the romantic context. And I really wish, especially specifically in American culture, it was addressed more as far as intimacy existing outside of solely just romantic context, because I think we'd be much more balanced as people. Also, specifically for me, being autistic, I know for me, I suffer from what I call like all eggs in one basket kind of issue, which basically means because I don't really have that many people in which I am romantically involved with. Like, I'm usually only romantically involved with one person, but they become my like everything, you know. And I feel like in my 20s, oh my gosh, did I struggle with this reality. And I think still some in my 30s. And again, to me, I'm honestly something that I'm still working on, in the sense of not having, you know, all these expectations, and I have my one source of, you know, fulfillment, or just, you know, problem solver, or whatever the case be solely the person who's my partner. Like, and it's very difficult because, as I said earlier, the only person I really want physical touch from is my partner. And so if I don't have that, or if they're gone, or whatever the case is, it affects me more deeply than most, because it is one of my dominant love languages, and that, you know, they're my only source. And so for something like that, I don't think I can necessarily change, just because that's just how my brain is. But what I can do is I'm trying to consciously, you know, have more connections to other people, whether it be online or otherwise, in which, you know, I can emotionally talk about things, or have that intimacy, or if I'm stressed out, or whatever the case is, so that I don't have to put all that weight on that one person, which also makes it really difficult for when that relationship falls apart, or ends. Then it's really difficult for me to then pick up the pieces, because I put so much energy and effort, you know, into that one person, that once they're gone, it's like, fuck, what do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it also lent me to be very vulnerable to abusers, specifically in my 20s, because I so naturally tended to be dependent on them, and it was easy for them to control that, and to basically detach me from any other supports and any other support system. That, you know, it was just a really fucked up, abusive, very stereotypically abusive situation, in which I had nowhere else to go and no one else to reach out to, because they had purposely manipulated the situation, in which I was 100% financially, emotionally, you know, physically dependent on them. So if you are somebody who has an autistic child, specifically those who do not identify as boys or men, you know, keep that in mind, and teaching them that, you know, the importance of having, you know, multiple sources of support. And I know for me, I struggled for many years, specifically with other women, because women have so many other social standards that I didn't understand. So a lot of the times women would end friendships with me about shit that I had no idea what the fuck I did. And it was just like these unwritten, like, girl code rules that I'm just like, how the fuck am I supposed to know that? Like, nobody told me, and you're not telling me.
Not a girl.
So, yeah, like, what the fuck? So needless to say, it would have been nice if somebody, or someone, or even those people in my life, because they're just like, they had this mentality, which I think is so annoying. And it's not just with girls, but society has this mentality of, you should know. And, you know, women do that a lot to men, in the sense of, oh, well, they should know how I feel, or they should know what to buy me, or they should know what to get me. And then within relationships with women, or, you know, you should know what you did, you know what I mean? Or you should know how that was, like, against breaking the girl code. And I'm like, no, that's not. And it's very ableist to have that mentality. So just communicate with people. And like I said, I don't ever have a problem with someone wanting me out of their life. Like, I'll respect their boundaries. But if you could just tell me why, just so I have an understanding, and then so hopefully I, you know, won't repeat it again in the future, that would be really helpful. And that's generally speaking. If you know someone is autistic, don't assume that they know things. Don't get upset and assume, like, oh, well, you know, everybody knows that. Or the favorite, quote unquote, that's common sense. Common sense isn't common, first of all. And it's just an elitist myth used to basically be ableist towards those of us who don't understand. And I find that Aulistics lack common sense way more so than actual autistic and neurodivergent people, because we are tend to be so logical, and a lot of Aulistic thinking tends not to be. So that is to say, just communicate with people and don't assume stuff and don't assume that we know anything. Like, I don't care how mundane you think that it is, teach us. Like, it's okay. Like, I would rather someone give me knowledge that I already have than to be on the other end of that and not know something that everybody else knows and being penalized for something that I literally don't understand.
Yeah,
it's a shitty feeling.
I agree. I was just having that conversation last week, actually. So fully agree, my friend. Okay, any more sexy talk? Anything else we had to say about sex and intimacy today? I mean, I know there's more we could say, but
I mean, we could talk forever today, but I think we've hit the bullet points and the main things. Again, just overall, have a safe word. Talk about consent. Talk about your likes and your dislikes ahead of time. Don't wait to the moment, especially for those who have sexual trauma. Make sure you have those conversations before you actually are intimate, because it can be very triggering for both involved.
Sex is more than penetration, right? It's
way
not
more.
That heteronormative thing. Like, sex exists in so many different forms, and you know, and some people don't like having sex, and it's not because they, you know, just need to be with a different partner or any of those things that people hear that are asexual or aromantic. Like, you're valid if you're asexual, you're valid if you have multiple partners, you're valid if you're monogamous. Like, you're valid in your experience, and
you're valid if you're poly. Like, which a lot of autistics are as well, are poly. So just
poly
whatever works for you.
It's actually really common in the disabled and autistic community to be poly, because it's a great way to get our needs met and to be resourced in a society that doesn't resource us. And, you know, sometimes, you know, being polyamorous allows us to, you know, navigate and really feel seen in ways that I feel like a lot of people can't tap into otherwise. And so, like, you're valid in all of your experiences, and it's not just this heterosexual, you know, sex experience is all that's valid. Like, there are so many other ways to be intimate and to partner with other people, and it can look a million different ways, and they're all beautiful. So
and valid. You know you more better than anybody else, so don't let anybody else try to tell you anything differently than what you know of yourself to be. And that includes for self-identified autistics, that includes for sexuality, that includes everything, like gender expression. You know you better than anybody else. So however you choose to identify is 100% valid, point blank, period. And whoever wants to argue that can go fuck themselves. No pun intended. And I don't mean by masturbate, I mean just fuck off.
And you know, don't put labels on other people. Like, that was done to me when I was in high school, because the people in my life thought that, you know, well, if we give her, you know, if we say like, hey, we know you're a lesbian, then, you know, she'll feel better. And it actually made it a lot worse. So don't put labels on other people. Like, allow them to navigate it. And if they never get to a label, that's okay. Like, you know, we don't have to, you know, sometimes trying to help people navigate and get to the label that is theirs actually does more harm. So the best thing you can do is surround the people that you love that are navigating these spaces with different options of what sex and intimacy and love and relationships look like, so that they can recognize themselves in them and find what fits for them, you know. So anyway, here we go, rambling again.
Education and representation matters, because at the root, that's what allows people to be able to have the words and the language, and also the communities to be there to give support and love and recognition and to be seen and valid. So yes, representation matters. So does education and having the access to that. So yes.
Awesome.
I think that's it. No more sexy talk with us.
I know. All right. Well, good. This was a fun little wrap up to the season. So thank you so much for joining us for this season 1 of the Audacious Autistics Podcast, the All the Things series. We did it. If you want to access more content like this, one-on-one communication, access to our classes, or you just want to help support us, we would love to have you join us on Podia, where we offer exclusives, bonus episodes, live interactive chat forums, and so much more. Please be sure to share your stories and your questions with us. We love to connect to our communities.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this season. Season 2 will be out on Podia, exclusively on Podia. So be on the lookout for that. And just thank you guys. And we'll be back in April. So we're gonna take a few months off and do some other things, including classes, which you'll be able to find on Podia. So yeah, look out for the different classes that we're gonna offer both together and individually. So Podia is the place to be. Check that out and join for free. Look at me rhyming.
Oh goodness. Okay. We love you all. Thank you so much for being here.